Hey, it's Rebecca Rutherford. Welcome to the What in the Well podcast. My friend Angie Huber and I are here to help provide an entertaining, unique, authentic, relatable perspective on well-being. We're trying to uncover what it means to maintain a balanced existence in all areas of your life: relationships, work, leadership, what have you. We want to help you shift your mindset, make real progress toward the work and home life you desire, while we share stories of how this stuff works in our own lives and in the lives of our coaching clients in the communities we serve. So if you feel out of balance, stuck, strained, overwhelmed, but hopeful that improvement is on the horizon, you are in the right place.
I'm such a holiday gal. My family's always been just kind of like traditional with the holidays. And we just have all these things that we do. Like, we go all in, and it's the 1 month where I'm like, this is going to be chaos. And that's fine. Like, I set my expectations accordingly.
Yep.
And which is, I think, generally a good philosophy on how to handle the holidays, but we can get to that later. And so I had all these plans. I was ahead of the schedule. I was like,
feeling good.
Yeah. I had sent something out to my family. I'm like, I want to do this and this and this. And we're going to, it's going to be so freaking quaint, and I can't wait. And then it was like the flu was just sitting back there like, like, oh, you think? Yeah. So it just
like an imposter, like a
yes, like that little thing in the back that's like, oh, I got other plans for you, lady. So yeah, it was like immediately after Thanksgiving, everything just went to not a good place. I feel like finally after the last 3 days, I'm like recovering. I finally am like seeing light at the end of the tunnel, because there were a few days where it was starting to get into my psyche where I'm like, this is it. This is how I'm going to live my life.
Yeah.
I'm never going to breathe fully again.
But man, you're not alone, right? Like,
No.
there's some craziness going on right now.
Yes.
And the holiday. So what you're bringing, and so my big question is, how do we stay calm?
Yeah.
And kind to yourself, right? Because as you know, these are like the trigger moments for most women right now, when like you get the sickness and then all the things and then the holiday schedule and I'm in the same. Like, how do you stay calm and still have some peace and joy and enjoy the holidays amidst all of that stuff?
Yes.
Like, for me, that's the challenge. Like,
yes, what I have kind of learned to try to do, not always flawlessly, but what I've always learned to try to do is set expectations in my head that sometimes you plan life and sometimes life plans you. And if you can embrace any situation like that, like, this is not going to be what I am envisioning in my, either flawless or adversely, like, it's not going to be as tragic as I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
If I'm just conscious the whole time, I don't lose myself in this like expectation of how my wishful self or my scared self thinks this is going to be. And I think in some ways it's helped me in this, last few weeks, go with the flow more than resist it. Like, it kind of, I hate this phrase so much, but I'm going to use it. Like, it kind of just is what it is. Like, there have been times in the past where I really cherish the traditions that we've been able to move forward with, but I've lost 2 weeks of December to the flu. I can't get that back. And it's going to be way too freaking cold to do some of the things that I wanted to do the next few weeks. I'm just going to not have that this year. So instead, I was like, my body is telling me to chill out. I have to be conscious of that and respect that, or I'm never going to feel better. And I have to rest. And that's what this season called for. When I was trying to call for something else, that's what this season decided for me. So, but again, it hasn't been flawless.
There's so much goodness in here, Rebecca, that I want to unpack, like, so much. And I'm trying to figure out where to start to unpack it. So one is what you just mentioned, how you let go of what you needed to let go of.
Yes.
And stress, by definition, is an unmet expectation.
Yes.
So it's the shoulding And so many moms of us, I should, or this is what I expect. This is how it should go. This is how it's going to go. This is all the events that I'm dreaming in my mind.
Right.
What I'm hearing you say is, in order for me to cultivate some peace in my life or joy in these moments, I'm letting go of the expectation for this holiday season.
Exactly. Yes.
And what's that been like, by just submitting to and leaning into the sick, almost like not leaning into the sickness to cultivate more sickness, but leaning into like, here it is. I can't control this.
Right.
But where can I find moments? If has there been a moment of peace or joy that you still have experienced? What's been happening?
Yes. So 100%, don't get me wrong. There have been moments where I was like feeling a little sorry for us, not just myself, but like my family. Cause I wanted to be able to produce those memories for them, for my kids, especially. But I have found that I've always been kind of a journaler. And in some ways that gives me the opportunity to go back and see that I did have moments of joy when I forget about it. It's kind of like what you're saying about Thanksgiving, where you're like, I think I had fun. I'm not really sure. And there are times in my life where I think about that, and I kind of think back on a season of life where I'm like, that was a tough season. But then you go back and you look at pictures of yourself and you're smiling and you're like, nobody knew I was struggling, but I wasn't always struggling. And for some reason, my brain wants to latch on to that as like a bad time, but it really wasn't all bad. And I have to remember that. I may feel bad in this moment, and that's why I'm almost picking things to reinforce that. But the reality is, if I can remember, either by going back through journals or just trying to get better at it, if I can remember in a specific moment that this isn't permanent, that everything is seasonal, that the more I resist it, the more stress I'm creating, the easier or more frequently I can just kind of lean into it and let what happens happen. And so that's been what I have tried as much as possible over the last few weeks to accomplish. Again, not always perfect, and I also try to bring that into the things that I'm expecting to have happen over the next few weeks, where it's all of this togetherness and how it's going to go in my head and how it probably will go. There will be hiccups. Maybe somebody's going to get sick again. I don't know. But what do they need in that moment? I needed rest. I needed a lot of Netflix.
Have you snuggled? Have you had more snuggles with your kids?
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially too, because they were just sick too. And whenever there's nothing more vulnerable as a parent than having your kid be helplessly sick, like where you call the doctor and they're kind of like, you just got to wait it out.
How do you lean in and just accept your reality for what it is? And you said something, and you're like, the more, if you're already resistant because you're mad because it's not meeting your expectation, and now you're resisting it even more, that's more stress.
Yeah. Yes.
By not, like, you're already stressed, but then resisting it more. I'm thinking of like punching, like leaning into a brick wall. So like you're banging your head up against the brick wall.
Right. Yes.
Like resisting the resistance is more resistance.
Yeah. So what about you? Like, how do you embrace these seasons where, you're, in some ways, it's almost like
constantly stay drunk. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I drink everything about. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, that's not helpful. I've learned. I've tried and true that tactic, and that's not helpful. Actually,
yeah. Well, there are seasons of life. I look back at those pictures and I'm like, I know how I got through that. I was not sober. Yes.
And getting through it, and I don't know that it was thriving through it. Right? It might have just been barely, not even surviving through it. I think that's just like
exactly. Yes. 100%.
No. All joking aside, so it's the mindset.
Yeah.
Every day and in the moments. This week has been the heaviest week I've had all week.
Oh.
And it could be one where I choose to get caught up in and let it take a hold of me.
Right.
And get caught up in the stress and the stress and the stress. And then I'm showing up to meetings with my family in this just, right? Yeah. Like what's that movie when they're like running around, like the kids running around? Is it Home Alone?
Home Alone. Yes. You're like Kevin, where you're like spastically like flailing.
Like
right.
Flailing to everything. Or do I choose like what you're talking? It's the mindset that I literally have to get myself into. It is not my default. I do not wake up and go, I am calm. There is things that I need to do to get grounded. My gratitude journal literally every day. My I am statements. It's setting just a few minutes to set the intention. If I don't to get myself, how do I want to choose to show up today? How am I going to stay grounded and balanced? Knowing I'm trying to keep all the chaos. I'm trying to be like this grounded tree. That's staying rooted in who I am. And yes, all the things that we can't control that are going to happen pop up. But how do I approach it still from a place of calm? And gratitude. I literally wrote yesterday. So yesterday I had so many meetings. I didn't know when I was coming or going or who I was or what day it was or anything like that. See how fast I'm talking because it was so chaotic. I mean, like chaos. I literally wrote a Post-it note that I had to set right on my computer that said, stay curious and be thankful. So in every single meeting, because those are moments, that's impact that we're putting out there with my kids. Like, again, I had events last night. I didn't get home till late, but like, okay, I'm in this moment with these people. How do I want to show up? Do they want to hear about how busy I am and all my to-dos and blah, blah, blah? No, because guess what? They have the same thing going on. So then we're just feeding the beast.
Right. Absolutely.
By talking about how crazy it is. So how do I do it? It's take some energy every day, just a few minutes for me to get into that space. And then how am I holding it?
There were moments. So, journaling again is a practice for me. I wake up early every single morning to do that, to start out in a place of, I just have to get my head right. I have to set the tone for the whole day. And because I was sick, I didn't get up early. I was like, I have to rest. But I did like once or twice journal in the first week when I felt horrible. And then a few days later, I started journaling and I knew I was getting better. So my journal was mostly focused on, I'm so grateful that I'm getting better. I'm trusting my body to know what to do to heal. And that was a few days in. But after a while, this has been going on for over a week. So a few days after that, I look at my journal and I was kind of like, okay, like, I get it. I get the point. Now, can I just recover already? Because this is getting old. It's ruining everything, So I did have those moments where I was like, this sucks.
And that's okay too.
And that's okay. Right. Exactly. Because just dumping that out and being open with, my friends or my husband or even my kids, like, hey, I'm sorry that this is happening to us right now. And thank you for being troopers. Like, go make some cookies and eat them in the kitchen. I don't care. Like, just create your own magical moments this season because I'm out. But like,
Mom's off.
Mom is Netflixing a lot. Mom is watching.
Mom's binge watching.
Yeah.
So
yes,
I go empower yourself.
It's a tool right now that mommy is using. I'm going to use the Netflix.
However, okay,
tool.
so let's so then what are you giving your kids in that moment?
Yeah, I'm giving them, first of all, I feel like I give them the freedom to solve their own problem, right? So that they don't rely on me 100% to entertain them all the time, or because if I don't set that expectation with them, then what are they learning about, how the world works with other people? Because beyond our own circumstances, especially going into the holidays, you get together with people in your family or friend groups where you're not going to hit it off with every single person. There might be people who trigger you, and you also have no control over that. You have no control over what somebody might say at a family function. That's just one of the things you hear about most when it comes to holiday seasons or seasons of togetherness with people that you maybe otherwise don't see that often. You anticipate that conflict, and so you bring kind of tension to that. But if you ultimately change your expectations of what people are allowed to get from you, what kind of response you're going to give. I think people learn, what is that? You train people how to treat you. Is that one of the sayings I've heard before? Well, it's the same way with my kids, where in those moments, I'm not at their beck and call. I'm not of service to them anymore because I have to be of service to myself. That teaches them that they're going to have to figure some stuff out sometimes.
And
they were cool.
Man, what a gift, right? You're helping them to problem solve and empowering them.
Right.
Also, and I don't know if this resonates or not, it's okay to not be okay. And so you're setting the example of, sometimes we got to call a timeout.
Right.
And it's okay. I'm not okay right now. And my body's telling me I need to rest and I'm taking it.
Right.
Versus the push through, no matter what. Like you're also teaching them that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to submit to what your body is telling you.
Right. Exactly. It's kind of like your tree analogy where they, especially our kids, get used to us being that grounded point for them in most cases, or we at least try to be. And you're producing fruit and you're giving it to everybody else. But at some point, they have to come to the realization that they are their own tree, and they have to ground themselves and they have to learn how to produce their own fruit for themselves and others. And, that happens as they age, and they have to, you have to train them to become that way in the world. Like our job as parents is not to control every situation for our kids. It's to nurture them to be independent human beings at some point. And so it's those kinds of moments where you have to be as transparent as possible with the people around you. Like, hey, in this time of need for myself, I'm going to have to take care of myself, which means you're going to have to take care of yourself. So it's a work in progress.
It's totally a work in progress today. And this was harder and sometimes it's harder for the parent.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
So I'm here every morning. One of the things I love is helping to get my son on the bus. I have 3 drop-offs and my last son is the one that's here and he gets on the bus. And we have this cute little routine that we read, and he reads a daily mantra and like the whole thing. Like we got a little process. Well, today I had an early meeting and I was like, okay, so even last night, because he likes me being there now, right? And so yesterday I prepped him like, okay, you're on your own tomorrow. Like I got an early meeting. I am not going to be able to help you. Like, so what do you need? Blah, 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 blah. Yes. And then this morning we went through it and okay, you're on your own.
Yes.
And then I was thinking, and then he was like, okay, I'm fine.
Yes.
And then I was like, who's really not fine in this scenario?
Right.
Right? Like, I think it was me.
100%. Yes.
He was fine. And we communicated about it. He knew what he needed to do. And it was like me just trusting him. Like, I know we prefer to be there, but he's okay. And very not mine was very, very microscopic to what you were just sharing, but it kind of goes back to what are we letting go of and how sometimes in these moments, because I could have felt mom guilt. Well, let's be honest. I did feel mom guilt. I'm not going to be here and my work's getting in the way and I got this early meeting and I went down that path of resentment, right? That we just go down and I'm like, it's Friday morning, 8:00, my 8:00 meeting. But then I was like, you know what? What's there to learn here? What's good?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm giving James the opportunity to solve his own problem and get himself out the door by himself.
Right. Yeah. And
that's a gift.
It is a huge gift. And he probably learned a lot of skills that are going to translate into other things in his life where he may have become very comfortable in a routine, but I mean, maybe they're,
not the best. It may not be the best, right?
I mean, it could be a catalyst for some change, like I've seen this past couple of weeks too. My kids and we have a similar routine where every single night I go into their rooms, we do prayers of gratitude, and then I tuck them in and they go to bed. And that we have been doing that since they probably don't even remember. But I couldn't do that these past couple of weeks. And instead they tucked me in. And it was actually very sweet where they initiated some of the conversations. They snuggled me and put me to bed. And I feel like in some ways they felt proud of themselves or like empowered and they went right to bed. They didn't have any complaints about it. They were very happy about it. And then after doing that for a week, I was fine to tuck them in last night and they were kind of thrown off by it almost, and in some ways had enjoyed tucking me in instead. And now I was kind of oh, like, oh, they don't need me as much anymore, but I'm back. Like I'm tucking them again, but it's like a
You're
mom.
like, listen, I appreciate that my apples
Yes.
fell off my tree. You
Right.
gave me a couple of your apples, but guess what?
Right.
I'm still growing apples.
Yes. I still have apples to give.
I still have apples to give.
Yes. So I had to
again, a gift, right? So how do
Yeah.
you just, by you letting go, submitting, not having expectations, look at these moments, these beautiful moments that have manifested.
Yes.
When we let go of the expectation and the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, we hold ourselves, I think as women especially, we are our worst enemy sometimes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's again, expectations. I think it comes back to like who do we want to show up as in every situation in our lives? Like who have we trained to expect certain things from us? And what happens when we can't give that anymore? We're so worried that we're going to disappoint somebody else. And I always love hearing Glennon Doyle's phrase repeated over and over again about, if you're going to disappoint somebody else, don't disappoint yourself. I know she says it more eloquently, but in some cases that is just what you have to do to ultimately take care of your own needs and then later show up as the best version of yourself, whatever that looks like. But it's a growth process. Every time you go into a situation where something is thrown off course, if you can embrace it as a learning opportunity, and like you said, stay curious about it. Like maybe go into a holiday party this season, consciously knowing that there might be some serious moments of suck, but you don't have to engage with it. You can just observe it. You can sit back and go, so-and-so is talking about politics again. I promised myself I wouldn't tolerate that this year. But what if I just observe and let it go? How quickly can we de-escalate that conversation if I just don't engage? And you might learn something about your ability to let things go that you will take with you the rest of your life. It's just an opportunity.
Yeah. And you're hitting on such a good way, because I know one of the things that we're talking about is how do you create balance?
Yes.
How do we create balance and stay in balance during this season of holiday? Because I love the holidays. I do. I'm with you. I love the holidays. And yet I just continue, just find ourselves caught up in all the busyness. And how do you create balance in that? And how do you de-stress triggers? There's triggering moments all the time. These are opportunities to practice, and you're giving such good insights on, okay, so one way to de-stress, or one way to stay in balance, right? Or create moments of peace and joy, or cultivate more peace and joy, is know where the stressors are. Just know them. And what's the plan? How do you want to go into it? You beautifully just said, you have a choice,
right?
We are always at choice. We have a choice to not engage in it. Or the other thing I've been hearing, and some of this is, working with clients all the time, working with women leaders and moms and all the things. Sometimes we don't give ourselves permission.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think it starts with, and you were heading on that, like, how do we just give ourselves permission to let go, or permission to just be, or permission to not engage?
Right. Yeah. I think a huge thing that I think is really helpful is getting into a habit of checking in with yourself. And sometimes that just looks like, what is my body telling me right now? Because you may be like, I've got this, I'm surviving, I'm pushing through.
And all the things done, your checklist is checking off, but your mindset is depleted and your body is exhausted.
Right. You lay in bed at night and you finally loosen your jaw and you're like, I have been clenched all day in my teeth, my teeth hurt. Or like I become like this. My shoulders progressively go up through the day as I get more and more stressed. And then all of a sudden I look in the mirror and I'm like, why do I look like a Ninja Turtle with like a shell on my back? Like I've been like escalating, like the temperature is going up. My body is so tense right now. And it's telling me like, you may think that you're tricking us into like everything.
The body knows. The
Bodies do not lie.
body
Yes.
knows. And
Absolutely.
the body knows. You just totally described my entire how I felt at that whole Thanksgiving season. It was just so I was doing all the things. I was like, wow, we're being productive, right? Checking things off. And
Got
I mean,
it.
we
Nailing
had
it.
so many dang events, saw so many family and members and celebrating and blah, 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 blah. We did it. To your point, my body was mad at me.
Yes.
My mindset was completely exhausted.
Yes.
So while we did all the things, you're nailing it for me, is like, yes, how do we dance through the holidays or through these busy seasons to where, yes, you can do the things, but you can also be calm. Your body doesn't have to walk around with your teeth clenched. Like, how can you actually like dance with a smile on your face and like you're taking it as it comes in? And so your body, your mindset, and your actions are like, that's how I visualize, like, if I can be like this in like early January, right? Like, okay, we did a bunch of stuff. It was like chaos, but I like my mindset. I still cared for my body. Like, I didn't gain a whole bunch of weight. If I can maintain, like figure out the healthy habits to maintain, then that's my goal.
So for me, one thing that's helped me a lot with like tuning into my body, I just started doing yoga again recently because that is what I need in this season. I was doing a lot of high intensity stuff and my body was like, meh. So I paused so I can do this. But something I have loved most about it is when these instructors are constantly saying, you know, do all these things. And then they're like, are you breathing? And 9 times out of 10, when they ask me that, I am not. I am like holding a pose and suffocating. And I'm like, oh yeah, like this will be a lot more enjoyable if I just breathe. And so that's that kind of their checking in or causing me to check in reminded me how important it is to check in and to, my husband always says the breakthrough happens when you identify the moment of breakdown. And when you check in with yourself, or you start to identify those triggers, those things like, oh, I know I'm stressed because my shoulders are high and my jaw is clenched. When you identify that as part of yourself, or it could just be a thought that you suddenly find yourself ruminating on, and you're like, oh, okay, this is the sign that I've got to do something different for myself right now, or else I'm going to bring that tension to whatever it is I'm doing and it's going to suck. I would much rather look back on this holiday as like, I didn't do all the things, but what I did do, I did with peace and joy, and I genuinely soaked it up. Like I would much rather have just looked back on this illness and gone, I didn't make myself go walk through Garden Glow at, you know, when it's 20 degrees while I was sick, just because I didn't want to miss out on something, you know?
So, okay, I cannot believe you just mentioned Garden Glow, because I was just getting ready to tell a story about taking the kids to Garden Glow. Literally, like I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking, how can I look back on that experience? So a couple weeks ago, we had tickets to go to the Garden Glow through my middle son. So my middle child's school. Okay, so cool. We get tickets. Day comes. Long story short, not going to get in all the deets, but my husband and him couldn't go. So my daughter and my 4-year-old and I decide, well, we can still go. So we go, and my daughter's 13 and she was loving it, right? Like loving it. My son, who's 4, however, had a whole different perspective, and he decided, literally to scream and cry and throw temper tantrums the entire way. And like, he would just fall down in the middle of the concrete path while people are walking by and literally scream at the top of his lungs. Like, I can't walk. I need a wagon. Like the whole thing. Like, and so Dorothy, his name's Joseph. And so it was a horrible experience. Yet in that, like, I was in those moments. So those are trigger moments, right? Yes. Okay. So you're triggered. Dorothy and I were triggered that entire experience. I kept having to breathe. Yes. And so what you're talking about, okay, I'm triggered. This is wildly embarrassing. This is not enjoyable. I had to let go of what I expected this experience to be, right? I literally was like, this is not going to be magical, a holiday. Like, this is not it.
Actually,
so I had to it totally sucks. So acknowledge it, like, this sucks. Like, and have that moment of like, okay, this sucks.
Yes.
Let go of, I have no expectations.
Yeah.
I had to breathe.
Yes.
And then, so I did, like, okay, I took a breath and said, how can there still be some magic here? Like,
absolutely.
where's the goodness?
God,
right. And so, like, we had moments where Joseph, we were carrying him on piggyback, right? And like making jokes. There was times where he wanted to sit on the bench that was literally nowhere where any lights were. So he like found that one bench. It's like he was like trying to make it miserable, right? He found the one bench and we sit down. I look at Dorothy, I go, well, this is a cool view. This is the only place in the whole park where there's no lights to see.
We came here for pitch black.
But in this moment, what can we do? Let's breathe. All right, let's chat. We took a selfie. Like, so like how I will look back on that, and not that it was a great memory, but how do we make the best? Like, Dorothy got some great shots at, like, and to your point. And here's what I also learned. Next time, just leave Joseph at home. And that's okay. Right. So there's also like, what can I learn here?
Yes.
Versus judging, shaming, stressing, the whole thing. We came home and there were moments in that disaster where there was some goodness and there was learning to be had.
Yeah, exactly.
And choices to be made.
I always try to also wonder in those moments too, like, is this funny? Like, is this somehow humorous? Like, it reminds me of when I took my 5-year-old to I had these, high hopes that he would go, and he started kindergarten this year, and we went to the, kindergarten, get to know the school day, and like before kindergarten started. And in my head, I was like, I could just see him like going in there and like being fascinated by all the stuff and like meeting his teacher and being cool. And, this was the time where he wouldn't talk to his teacher, but then ultimately busted out in my money don't jiggle, jiggle to the teacher. Like, his first words to the teacher was to sing the jiggle, jiggle song. Then at this event, he starts clucking like a chicken. I don't know what happened in his brain that was like, I need to start like flow with the scratch and everything that a chicken does. And then he started laying down in the hallway. Like, people were stepping over him. Yeah. And I was just like, okay, well, that's not what I pictured happening, but this is funny.
Here it is.
So, like, I'm standing back taking pictures of him because I'm like, I cannot wait to show him this when he is older. Like, guess what your first impression for everybody at your school was? So in those moments, like, where there is a total just like things implode, I do try to look at it and go, okay, is this funny? Like, is this going to be,
or what's funny here?
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of humor. And what I'm also hearing you say, and this is something I've learned and I'm still learning, is that our kids' actions do not need to reflect on us.
No.
And so much, again, that's the whole thing. And the expectation. Sometimes we get like, oh, this is embarrassing because he's acting out. Now I look like bad. Right. Yes. So how do you, so what I heard in that moment is that you had a very healthy barrier of, this is him. This is his experience. These are his actions. I'm going to support him, but this is not reflective of me at all.
Absolutely.
And in that moment at the Glow, and it happened probably 8 to 10 times. I mean, we had to cut it, we ended up cutting it short early and anyway. Yes. And I kept like, as he was doing that, I mean, people are swarms of people are walking by staring at him. And I kind of would take a step back and I'm like, this is him. This is not me.
Right.
And are there funny things here? And there kind of were. Like, I was like watching people's reactions. Yes. At some point I was like, do they even know who this kid's mom is? Like, it doesn't matter. Right?
Like, can I slowly walk away?
I would be like,
whose kid is that? Whose kid is that? Like, what is happening here?
And how do we give ourselves the permission to release ourselves from that expectation that this moment is no reflection, even though there's 15 people looking at us. How do I stay very calm and confident? Like, this is just a moment. This has no reflection whatsoever on me, my parenting, or even my child's behavior. Because, you know, like this is not like, it just is this. Well, and you say that term, like, I know we don't like it is what it is. But what I think about is this is just what's happening right now.
Absolutely.
There's a tired child who we probably shouldn't have brought him out. He's tired. And he's saying his legs hurt, which they probably did because we walked a lot. And he just wanted a wagon.
Right.
And so that was his very passionate, energized way of saying he wanted a wagon.
Well, I think
so when you distill it and take all the emotion out, right? If you just take all the emotion out and the thinking and just say, what's actually happening here?
Right. Yeah.
What's the information here with no judgment?
Right.
And that's what you would see. You would see a tired kid whose legs are tired. Yeah. I love this. I love this episode around balance and some things that we can do to stay in balance through this season. Amen. As we close out, Rebecca, what would be like our top 3 things that we want our listeners to take away?
So for me, I think one thing that is going to be huge, not just in a holiday season, but just in life, is to check in with yourself. And I think too, since we're naturally kind of bad about that, like set a reminder in your calendar that just says, how am I doing? Check in.
Or on your phone. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like do something to prompt yourself if you're not used to doing that yet. And it'll become a habit after a while, but if you need a little help, use the tools that you have. So I think for me, that's one of the biggest things that I'm kind of drawing out of this conversation. It's just check in with yourself, your body, your mind. What do you need? And course correct as needed.
Yeah. So I love the check-in. I love what I'm walking away with, or I'm longing for us and all the other listeners out there is, how do you want to be?
Yeah.
Like, what's your intention? How do you want to be and show up?
Yeah.
This season, and then the check-in. And what you heard from Rebecca and I is we have some practices in the morning that gets us grounded. Mm-hmm. That could be journaling, that could be the gratitude journal, it could be the I am statements, it could whatever, and if you don't have a practice today, that's okay. Start small. I had a client of mine that never did gratitude or journaling or anything, and she just started with waking up and writing 3 things every day, and then that 3 turns into 5, and then 5 turns into so start small. Absolutely. And then throughout the day. I love that. How are you just checking in? Is this a time? And how do you give yourself, like, that builds self-love? How am I doing here?
Yeah.
And what do I need?
Yeah.
Do I want to engage?
Right.
Do I not? Like, what's the choice?
Yeah. I think reminding yourself that in that situation, like your perspective matters, your well-being matters. And it's not just about what do other people need, because I think we naturally just kind of look around the room and go, how can I serve you? How can I serve you? How can I serve you? But it's not selfish to take care of yourself. I think that's a hugely valuable lesson that we have to learn throughout life, is how can we put in practice actually taking care of our own needs so we can meet other people's. I think finally too, one of the big things that just from like a macro level is expectations. I think it's just a matter of, yes, it's great to dream and visualize and hopefully do that optimistically and sometimes not so optimistically, but don't get so latched on to how you want something to go that you cannot cope with how it goes, because there's almost always going to be a disparity between how you envision it and how it's actually realized in real life. So, and that's for events, that's for specific people, maybe changing your expectations of how somebody's going to respond or act in a certain situation, and what you need to do to protect yourself from over engaging or, getting all riled up or letting it hijack you and ruin whatever it is, whatever situation you're in.
It's beautiful. It's the letting go of the expectations.
Yeah.
Do not resist. The more you resist the resistance,
Yes.
Bam, I just picture my head beating it up against that wall back there.
Right. Yes.
And to take it to land at home that's micro or macro, the micro thing. If you do nothing else, breathe.
Yes.
Take moments to breathe.
Yeah.
Because that is a secret weapon.
Yeah. That just reminded me to breathe just now. Like that actually, I see you doing it too. Like that's it. That's the thing.